Welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of Coral, Kelp, and Community. Today we're doing Part 2 of Nature Conscious Governance with Lucy Ward from the Nature Governance Agency. Of course, we recorded in June, so the first thing we talked about was the heat.
I'm actually really glad that I re-listened to part 1 to prepare for this, because the whole thing about finding that balance between personal responsibility and collective action and not letting yourself fall into despair when things are hard, which I feel like when there's a heat wave, it's so hard to escape that feeling because it is hitting you so physically and so personally. You're like, okay, this is happening, it's here. And it's so easy to fall into despair, and you just have to remember that there are still things we can do, and find how to cultivate joy and kindness in your work and in your life really, really can help balance out all of the news that we're faced with.
Yeah, and just
Alarming news.
the heat does, you're right, the heat does make things feel heavier. And I think that's part of the reason why I like doing the work that we're doing so much, and that a lot of how it's designed and frameworked and our processes of working as a team as well are really centered around just finding joy in doing the work, and that this kind of work shouldn't always be really heavy and burdensome, and it should be something that people want to do and want to be engaged in. And I think part of that for us is laying that foundational groundwork in terms of the cultivating joy and kind of happiness within our own work too, and letting that seep into what we bring to other people as well. Because you can't really give that to someone else if you haven't already given it to yourself.
So for my regular listeners, you know that part 1 of Nature Governance was very much the philosophical underpinnings. We had a great historical perspective as well on just conscious governance in general. And Allie really laid that foundational groundwork. And Lucy is here today to provide us with some examples of what it's like in practice, and specifically in ocean spaces, which I'm very excited about. And so, if I'm remembering correctly, we talked about this a really long time ago. I'm glad we're finally doing it. But did you have an example from the North Atlantic?
Yes, we do. I will need to make sure that there's probably sad elements of this that I can't talk about too much, in terms of just making sure we're protecting clients and our collaborators and partners. So yeah, I'm gonna think carefully, but yes, we do. We have been working with an organization called Hub Culture for a while now, and the head of Hub Culture, Stan Stormaker, is a hugely inspiring guy. He is so forward thinking, such a thought leader. He's very much a doer. And yes, we have worked with Stan and Hub Culture to put the Atlantic Ocean on their board. So this is something that has been in existence for a while. And that was a really big and exciting thing, because obviously having the idea of nature on the board is such a big thing, but also the idea of how you can funnel that through kind of specific ecosystem or kind of natural entity in this case, what that looks like, and kind of playing around with what that then means for how it translates has been really interesting.
So what has made you the most excited about this work?
The work in general, or the work with Hub Culture?
Let's do both.
Okay. I mean, well, at least the stuff with hub cultures, I think it's so interesting to really play around with and really explore in partnership what it looks like to apply these frameworks and processes with this specific focus on ocean ecosystems and the ocean as a natural entity and a body that should be represented and heard more carefully within corporate governance structures and organizations in general. And the potential that has to set precedent and show that it can be done is really exciting for me as someone with a background in, marine biology and as an ocean lover. And I think that application is deeply exciting. But about the work in general, I think it is just this combination of I get so enthralled and excited. What drew me to it initially was this combination of what it looks like to implement legal and structural techniques to provide the groundwork within an organization for more conscious governance. So what it looks like to lay this groundwork legally and to work with structures and processes, because my brain kind of works in two ways. I'm not naturally super creative, but I definitely have that in there, especially when I tease it out. But I do love I love creativity that sits within a process almost. I love being able to contextualize stuff and feel like I understand what's going on and then being creative within that. And I feel like that is a lot of the work that we try and do. And that, you lay this groundwork, you play around with structural legal changes, and then it's, okay, what does this look like in practice? How can we coach, train, facilitate, work with individuals, leaders, and other people within an organization to really tease out what this looks like in practice and kind of play with that creative process, but with this kind of legal and structural grounding that I think is really important for ensuring that it's embedded into an organization right at the kind of from the top down, but also playing with those more bottom-up techniques at the same time. I think that's the thing that really pulled me to it in the first place and what I love playing around with.
Yeah, that two things. First, I do think everyone is creative, but in different ways based on our backgrounds. Whenever people are like, "Oh, I'm not creative," I'm like, I bet you are. And having gone to art school, I think that it's partially a societal thing of creative people do visual art or music or theater, right? But science isn't creative because it's so structured. And it's no, you're being super creative. You're solving puzzles, right? You're doing a systems type of thinking to make something work in a specific context. And that's super creative because you're making it up, right? You're figuring out how to get this thing to work. So everyone just enjoy the fact that you are probably creative in some way. But also what it sounds like is that, without going into any confidential specifics of your clients, it sounds like nature conscious governance, when being applied to a particular business, also has to be kind of site specific, right? Because it's the nature that's there. It's that ecosystem. And then it also has to relate to what that business or nonprofit or government agency or whatever, what it is they're doing, what their purpose is. You're nodding, so I'm guessing that's
Definitely.
that it needs to be tailored.
I think that, and maybe I wouldn't say site specific, maybe I'd go kind of more context and case specific, because I mean, for hub culture, they do have kind of a direct and specific impact on the Atlantic Ocean that they really want to be accounting for, and they wanted that voice specifically to be a part of their board in terms of strategic decision making. But I think you're right in terms of it really has to be fit for purpose, and it has to make sense and allow for the room and space of, okay, this is our understanding of what nature is, and this is a kind of broader understanding of what it can be, and then this is how we understand that we end up impacting on the wider system as a whole. and what that looks like as well when you're including humans as part of nature and as part of these natural systems, right? And so I think that, yeah, making sure that it's very context and case specific in terms of doing that contextual work to understand where each organization is coming from, where their baseline is, where the groundwork needs to be done, to then letting that guide the actions that are taken, and how, for example, these legal and structural changes are designed and then implemented and applied. Yeah, that's so important. And I think looking at, yeah, those specific kind of natural entities that you might have more of an impact on and how you relate to them and why you relate to them in the way that you do, what is driving that, is, yeah, really important for making sure that these changes and the subsequent kind of application of them is really fit for purpose and as effective as it can be.
Yeah, and I think that's also, it kind of embodies, like, for a long time, I never understood the phrase, think local, act global, right? But it's kind of what you're talking about, the fit for purpose. Like, every ecosystem impacts the global ecosystem in a different way because everything is connected. In a way, it's one ecosystem, like it's one ocean. Uh, but like how the British Isles are really, really critical to a lot of migratory birds and migratory marine mammals. Um, and they have a huge impact on the globe because of how far these animals travel. And so when you're trying to organize this governance, even if it's for one organization, like making that change, even if it's just the North Atlantic, can be, it's going to have huge ripple effects. And so I like thinking about it that way. And I also think it helps us imagine our impact, our little collective action. Because it maybe, it doesn't feel like much to be doing a community garden or working with one organization. But if you think about it on that scale, it adds up.
Yeah, it's that, it's that everything everywhere all at once element. You have to be able and be willing to tackle different areas and let different actions coexist at the same time and tackle different areas at the same time, because, yeah, we're at the place where it really has to be everything everywhere all at once. And I've started adding all together as well, because I think that it's very easy to do this, especially when you're coming from the NGO space. Can be very easy to do this in silo, in this kind of fear and scarcity mindset of, oh, we're all underfunded and overworked and being underpaid for doing work that is good. And then seeing work that maybe isn't so good for the planet and the community systems being really, really, really well paid, and feeling that disparity. And I think that drives this kind of siloing of actions. And this need to kind of, yeah, chunk things off and tackle them in silo. But I think it's in, and while I understand that's often necessary, you do have to tackle what you can tackle. I think it's really important to also recognize like what it means to be the part of a wider mycelium, and recognize that even though you're tackling something a little bit differently, there's very similar core goals often that are aligned. And if you focus on the broadness of these core goals and use that as something to draw your actions together and be able to support each other, even if what you're doing is seemingly quite disparate, I think that it's important to, recognize that they can all coexist and just focus on the synergies and how people could collaborate. I think that translates back into, the work that we do with hub culture, for example, focusing on the Atlantic Ocean. I think it's really important to recognize that you can focus on a specific element of nature and trying to embody and speak for that, while still recognizing that that's part of a wider system. The Atlantic Ocean is part of one ocean, and they are aware of their impact on this part of the one ocean, and setting it into that context is important to being able to address the problems holistically and fully and in a more regenerative way.
Absolutely. And I again, there's that like balance of having issues that are siloed, um, because you can only tackle so many things at once, on your own or as an organization. Um, but just keeping in mind the intersectionality of it, which I think is huge for nature governance because it brings in how connected everything is. Um, like, and I struggled with this when I was younger and overwhelmed by the woes of the world. I was like, "Oh my God, like what issue could I possibly choose?" Like, and when climate change really came to the forefront of my mind, I was like, I felt like, am I even allowed to work on anything else? But if you think about it, like so many things impact climate change. The sources are so many. And even just, trying to save the whales is good for climate change, right? It's good for the ocean, it's good for climate change. There's the whale poop pump, that like fuels the phytoplankton and moves nutrients around and keeps the whole ocean ecosystem in good shape, which thus keeps a more resilient global ecosystem. And so it is okay for us to work on a particular thing that calls to us and that we are passionate about. And keep being like, this is the thing I love, and this is how it is connected, and this is the ripple effect that I'm creating in the world.
100%. And like, it's interesting that you bring up the kind of whales as an example, and yeah, the whole whale pump thing that I think is often overlooked. And I think that's like, it embodies the, again, this like trend of like either we're focusing on climate or biodiversity. Like we can't focus on both at the same time, which is ridiculous because they're, inextricably linked and interconnected. And I was actually in London at the Restore Nature Now March on the Saturday that's just passed, which was amazing. It was a brilliant event to see. I'm not sure if this estimation is right, but I read somewhere that there was like 500,000 people there. I've also read low as 100,000, so I'm not really sure what the estimate is, but there was a lot of people there either way. That was just so beautiful to see, before the upcoming election in the UK, in terms of like really trying to bring to policymakers' attention what it looks like to, that biodiversity matters to people in the UK and elsewhere, and that, really highlighting that it's not just climate that we're marching for, and recognizing that even where we are marching for climate, we're still marching for nature because it's the same. And there was just the most beautiful array of kind of messages and signs. And, I was walking with the Business Declares group, which was a really interesting group to be with. And there were some amazing signs of like, there's no business on a dead planet. And I was walking behind someone who had a beautiful sign that said, let the C-suite speak. C as in SEA rather than C-suite executive. So that was very beautiful. And again, it was just so, I was actually thinking of you a bit as well, because there was so much beautiful like artwork hanging around all day. And there's some amazing like watercolor and chalk pieces of marine life as well that I was spotting, and it made me think of some of your work.
Oh my God, I am absolutely writing that down. Let the C-suite speak. Like, oh my God, I love it so much. I'm like, it's so good. I feel, you always see the things that are like, I need vitamin C and it's SEA, and I'm like, yeah, that's great that you love the ocean, but like, this is just such a fun take on that. I love it so much. What a great way to embody like nature on the board.
Yeah.
Or like nature governance, especially given the work in the North Atlantic. But yeah, that's fantastic. God, I wish I could have been there.
It was an amazing demonstration. It was the first march I'd been to in the UK. So that was really beautiful. And we were walking right behind one of the really big kind of, a group of drummers. So you could really feel the momentum, and it was super loud, and it was, really, really gorgeous.
Yeah, I think a lot in Western society, we forget how important it is to have community and to have those experiences of like marching with people can be so cathartic because, especially after COVID, we've been so isolated. And to know that you're not alone in the things that you care about and believe in and want to fight for, and to see that many people, whatever the real estimate is, um, is really fantastic. And that I'm stoked just hearing about it. Um, like I'm revved up and ready to go and paint a sign now. Like when's the next one? Oh, but speaking of events, uh, tell us about the nature governance. I'm going to get the title wrong. Nature governance, immersion leadership
Yeah,
event happening in Wales. Please,
amazing.
right?
Yeah.
Middle.
I guess the word that most people are used to is retreat, a nature retreat, but we are calling it a nature being immersion because I think the word retreat kind of, I think it insinuates too much that you're retreating from real life. You're going to nature and you'll then retreat back again. And you may bring some with you, but the idea is that actually you're immersing yourself in the real world, in nature, in systems and processes that we are, supposed to be considering and thinking about. And I guess it is, yeah, that idea of bringing nature into the boardroom versus let's bring the boardroom and people and decision makers and leaders out into nature and really be immersed and use that as, well, just to be there, to explore nature being itself, but also your being nature, which is why it's called the nature being immersion. It's really just exploring and trying to get more deeply into what it means to be a part of nature and how to be more connected and to take the time to listen. So it will be a 7-day retreat in Wales, in Snowdonia. We're partnered with the wonderful Caernarfon Eco Retreat in Snowdonia, nestled right behind the beautiful lake. So we'll be there for a whole week, and with on-site practitioners, there'll be a few days of silent sound and somatic works to really move through and kind of support this time for more deep nature connection, and allowing that kind of space and mind opening, and the somatic work as well particularly has been shown to be really great for kind of opening up neural pathways and letting people kind of open their minds a bit and really get into the flow of hearing and absorbing new information. And so in the last few days of that retreat, myself and the other NGA team members will be facilitating conscious conversations. So having the kind of discussions that we would normally in a boardroom, and kind of following that up after everyone has had a chance to really be.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. I will include links in the show notes for anyone interested in attending. There's only 18 or 20 spots, right?
Yeah, as of now, there's probably only about 10 left. So do sign up if you're interested.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds like a great way to really consider these concepts of how to partner with nature and recognize our role as a species within the ecosystem and figure out how to implement that in one's leadership and role in their organization. That sounds absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think such a key part of, being able to practice more conscious governance and of facilitating, the kind of more bottom-up changes that come along with making legal and structural changes is working with leaders and decision makers to help integrate that into their practice, and work on this more kind of this more one-to-one basis almost, where you can really work with someone to help lay the groundwork for what it looks like to implement these changes that we're working with.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And I really feel like now is the appropriate time. Like there's so much societal shift and changes in thinking, and I don't want to say new voices, but perhaps voices that were previously marginalized gaining more of a platform, which is so important. So yeah, it seems like very good timing. And I have in my notes here that it is occurring in August from the 12th to the 18th. Again, there will be links in the show notes for more information. Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we bid our listeners adieu or au revoir?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just talk a little bit about the work that we do in terms of how we can help people to kind of access these legal and structural changes that I'm talking about. Because I think it can be a bit limiting sometimes to just think about the case studies in themselves and the way they've been implemented, because the idea of implementing more nature conscious governance and bringing the voice, the vote, and the way of nature into your corporate governance, because this is so emergent. The way that it's been done thus far is, there's quite different case studies, and again, it's been quite context specific in terms of what each organization, what their vision and goal has been, and how they've implemented this. And I think sometimes that can make it feel a little inaccessible. So we partnered with B Lab in the Benelux region, so Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, and Nine Roda Business University at the beginning of the year and over the end of last year to write an onboarding nature stakeholder toolkit. And that was released in April, and we've been doing some launch events and talking about it since release. And I'll just highlight that because that's a really great material to dig into these previous case studies. It was, there was research and interviews carried out with each case study to, really examine how they had onboarded nature as a stakeholder. And then from that, we pulled out kind of 4 models of how this has been done. So nature as inspiration, nature as advisor, nature as director, and then nature as shareholder. So, for example, Patagonia resides within the nature as shareholder model, Faith in Nature and Hub Culture would reside within the nature as director model. Companies like Blide and Willy Croft, who are operating in the Netherlands, would reside within the nature as inspiration model. And then the ZOO model and the Zoonomic Institute, who work with that model, would reside within the nature as advisor model. And these models, I think, are very useful in helping to show how this can be implemented and how organizations of different size and structure and vision and goal and capability, time-wise and financially, can look to implement these changes and can start this journey of onboarding nature as a stakeholder and start to hear the voice of nature more carefully and then look to implement that in their governance. That's just something I wanted to highlight in terms of what it can look like in practice. But again, with this focus that the legal and structural changes aren't the be-all and end-all, and these 4 specific models aren't the be-all and end-all, I think that as we've said before, it has to be very case and context specific and fit for purpose. And that really needs to be grounded in what an organization or business's vision is, what your theory of change would be. How do you see nature? Why do you want to implement the voice of nature into your organization? And how can we make this the most applicable? And how can we really then work in integration and implementation of a specific legal structural model to ensure that the change seeps all the way through, and that you can see it falling all the way down through an organization like a waterfall. It's going through all of the different cracks, and it's all gonna, kind of pour right down from the top. You can feel that going all the way down. That
is fantastic. And I think also really critical to have these different models, because when we're working on new ideas and new concepts and how to implement them, really the issue is our imaginations are going to be the limiting factor, right? And so being able to have ideas kind of thrown at you will help you come up with your own ideas, right? A new model. How does it work for your organization? And it also seems like that is going to be a key element, or one of the key elements in the immersion event in Wales, right? Is that like these are the values and principles and concepts, and they can really be applied anywhere by anyone if you can imagine a good way to implement it.
Definitely. I mean, our work so far has been very varied, industry wise, size of organization wise, jurisdictionally. So yeah, I think that, these models do help to elucidate that that's the case and that it's not really for one type of organization. Obviously, there's challenges that are presented in working with different types of organizations, and each organization has and will face its own challenges and what it looks like to implement something like this. But so far it has been very, very, very varied. So the call to action is global, really, which is really exciting.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for highlighting that. There will be more links to important things in the show notes, including the Nature Governance Agency, for which Lucy works currently, and the immersion event in Wales. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of that information. I'm so thrilled to know it's happening.
Thank you for having a show like this, and taking the time to focus on the ocean and ocean issues, but also in such a diverse and interesting way. Like, I've listened to so many of the episodes, and just the diversity in people that you bring on is so beautiful and interesting. But the way you always tie it back to these kind of specific ocean issues is, really beautiful for me as well as a fellow ocean lover.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, and I've said it before and I'm saying it again. I'm just trying to create content that, like, I know I needed and still need as someone working in these spaces. So I hope that many other people appreciate it and are touched like you.
I'm sure they are. I know I am.
Fantastic.